thank you all for joining today. It's good to see so many faces, and it's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I am Proto, I'm CEO of Virtual Reality Marketing, and again, I want to welcome all of you guys to have joined us here by the pool. And I also want to welcome those who are watching us online. The event is live streamed on AWE Live. And as usual, I like to start by giving you a little bit of context about us. Here at VRM, we've been on a mission to connect enterprises and brands with leading AR and VR and Metaverse creators for the past few years. On our website, Virtual Reality Marketing, we try to be a resource and have a large quantity of data. So we've got this large database of about 3,300 XR creators, 700 AR and VR case studies across all business verticals. And online on LinkedIn, we are the largest group of XR professionals. We just went past 70,000 members last month, so that's absolutely amazing. And thanks for all of you guys to keep following us and keep showing up online and on the events. It means a lot to us. And finally, we are a business consultancy, and our goal always is to be a guide to the business metaverse. And I love to say that we love to inspire and educate and facilitate immersive business in that order. And last thing, if you need help to connect with the right metaverse partner, we can definitely help. And you should get in touch with Sophia or myself. You've got links to our LinkedIn profiles by the bar behind you guys. Before we start, I want to thank Michelle and Marcy wearing the red cowboy hats. They're making sure that everything is running smoothly for all of us in the background. I want to thank Carlos, our videographer. That's the little drone in front of me. The team at M2 Studio is hosting us in this beautiful environment, so thank you guys. And like I said, our partner AWE for having those events stream on AWE Live. And finally, about today, I think we've all seen the big switch to online events during COVID, and by now most events are hybrid events. And it means that on one hand, you have a physical event, but on the other hand, those events are often live streamed or recorded and available on the internet in one way or another. But what we really love is that there's also a new direction that's gaining traction, and it's spatial events hosted in the metaverse. And we've said for a while that remote is the new normal, and that XR is the best remote. And the reason we love those events so much, and I'm sure all of you will agree today, it's the feeling of presence. It's the feeling that, right now, all of us feel that we are together in the same space, despite all being in different cities all around the planet. And what we love with this is that those events come with plenty of cool opportunities, and you can do new things either as shared experiences in the metaverse or by connecting immersive experiences with the real world and have, back and forth between the two. And today we have the best guest to talk about this exciting topic. So they'll share their experience working both on the business side with corporate events or workshops, or also on consumer events with mainstream brands. So please welcome Adam Lorimar of Clue and Ethan Barr of Ethos. And Sophia, I'll let you continue the conversation from here, as usual.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you guys again. Lots of familiar avatar faces. Hey. Hi, Ethan and Adam.
Hey.
Just a reminder that I did see a couple of you guys raising your hand, so that feature is enabled, so that's good. So basically what we'll do is we will have some QA happening on stage between us. I'm talking about virtual, hybrid, and physical events. And then we will turn it over to you guys to ask your questions as well. And we like to give as much time as possible for audience questions because we usually get a lot in the queue. So we will make our portions short and sweet so we can start the dialogue with you guys. So make sure that to raise your hand and keep that raised because so we know, how many questions are going to be in the queue, so we know how much time to allocate. And so with that, let's get started. My name's Sophia, by the way. Okay, so let's start with introductions. From Ethan, we'll start with you. If you want to go first, just give us a brief intro on you and your kind of pathway towards XR and what you're doing now.
Sure. So my name is Ethan Bach. Hello. I am the founder and CEO of Ethos. We're a metaverse and experiential design studio. Just in the last 2.5, almost 3 years, we added the metaverse piece. I've been working in creative technology for over 25 years now and 16 years now in immersive interactive design. Alt Ethos has been around for 7 years. We have been doing physical immersive interactive. We've been working with cities and museums and libraries and brands throughout our 7 years. And then during the pandemic, we started doing metaverse events, and now we're doing metaverse events and design and builds. We are technology agnostic, so that means that we work with a lot of different metaverse platforms. And we have preferences. Of course, you'll see an example of that in a minute. We like more photorealistic spaces, as you'll see. But yeah, excited to be here. I love everything that is about storytelling and engagement, and I love working with all the different technologies. So some of the things that we'll talk about today too is how we're integrating the physical and the metaverse and virtual spaces. So I'll hand it off to Adam.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks very much for having me here. Pleasure to be here. So my name's Adam Lorimer. I head the business for Glue in North America. Glue's a immersive collaboration platform, primarily for enterprise, also education a little bit, higher education. But we basically recreate the feeling of being in a space with your team, with your clients, with your suppliers, with your broader kind of stakeholder community, and kind of bring that kind of subjective feeling of being together with a group of people you're working with, and various with productive in a space. So first got interested in virtual reality a long time ago. I'm a kind of an energy and clean technology guy by background. And let's see, what is it now? About 6 or 7 years ago, I kind of had a little bit of an epiphany that that a large part of our climate impact was about moving people and goods around the world. And what if we could, recreate that feeling of being in a space with other people without having to get on a plane, without having to drive every day, without having to support an office building? And that would happen to coincide with the first wave of consumer virtual reality. And that's one of the reasons why it's so nice to be back in Altspace, because Altspace was kind of where it was at in 2016. It really was the only game in town, and it's still a great game. And so I hosted a speaker series back in 2016, 2017 here in Altspace, pre-Microsoft days, about how VR could impact environmental issues. And that covered a whole bunch of different things about raising awareness, as well as actually providing a physical platform for meetings and getting people together. So since then, deepening and growing, and Glue is working with companies all around the world to provide a platform to get teams together and to bond and form culture and be productive and have great ideas in a spatial environment.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And I know, Ethan, you said you had a video to play, so just let us know whenever is an appropriate time to play that. Okay. So let's start with just like the premise of socializing in VR, because that's what really makes VR special, and specifically when we're talking about events, we're talking about socializing in mass groups of people. So I think it's appropriate to kind of start at the roots of like, sometimes we don't fully realize the intricacies of what makes communication and interactions better in VR. We just are here and we're like, oh, this is awesome. This feels natural. But can you talk about maybe the benefits of meeting people in a spatialized immersive environment over 2D video calls and how it actually mimics the real world?
Yeah, so I think for those of you who are here in Altspace with a VR headset on, this will be something that will be like, well, obviously it's different, but I know we're live streaming this to 2D formats as well. So it may be worth kind of explaining.
Hold on, Adam. I want to ask a question. I'd love to know who's joining us on a headset in VR and who's connecting from a PC. Can you like raise your hand, the headset people? That would be interesting. Okay, so
if you're on a PC, you can't raise your
Actually,
hand,
anybody on a PC can't even raise their hands.
Exactly.
This is great.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, that's cool. That's really great. So for you guys, it's going to be obvious. Those joining on PC or seeing this on a live stream, maybe that kind of subjective feeling of what we call presence, social presence, co-presence, is not quite there. But there is a palpable difference in that feeling of actually being in a room with someone. I mean, for me, at least video calls work pretty well one-on-one. One on maybe 3 people in a video call works okay, but if you get more than like 4 or 5 people, I just completely lose it. It's like talking to a wall. It's like talking into an empty void, and you can see people's faces, but most people aren't paying attention. Whereas here, you can get small groups of people together, and because you have spatialized audio, because you can tell which direction people's voices are coming from, because you can kind of impromptu step out into sidebar conversations, have more than one conversation going on at once, you turn and address your comments to a particular person, it really feels a lot more like you're together. The conversation flows a lot better. It's not like in a video call where you have to say, okay, I turn to talk, everyone listens. This person's turn to talk, everyone listens, which is a very kind of static, boring, frankly, way of communicating. It's not how we communicate in a real room. Here is much more like a real room. And that feeling of being there, particularly when you have facial animation and a whole bunch of other cues, which we work on in Glue to reinforce that illusion of co-presence, is really is a different kind of feeling of connection.
I was just going to say, just a caveat real quick. I just got my MetaQuest Pro, and the emotional expressions that you can convey, yes, Sam, that you can convey through that just exponentially enhances these social experiences for probably not so obvious reasons, but once you experience it, it's pretty amazing. I think it only works on the Meta Horizon avatars right now, but I do encourage you guys to check it out. But go ahead, Ethan.
Nice. I'm excited about that myself. So great. Thanks for sharing that. So I agree with what Adam was saying. Absolutely. I'm all about like, how can we connect more? How can we convey more emotion? How can we have unexpected joy, right? Like, I don't know, anyone here ever had unexpected joy in a Zoom phone call, a Zoom call? Like, yeah, okay, yeah, a couple unexpected joy. No, not so much. Okay. I don't know about you, but lately, like Zoom is just like driving me nuts. So there's a certain thing too that happens with the video calls. I appreciate, exponentially, I appreciate that functionality like Zoom has been here, especially during this time. If you can imagine that we had COVID back in the 80s or something like that, how limited we would have been. So I am appreciative of that. But there's real studies about getting Zoom fatigue, checking out, not really being able to pay attention. There's real studies on that, and there's real studies about just feeling exhausted when you're on Zoom calls all day. I'm on different video calls all day, and I try to mix it up with Metaverse, just one, to break it up, but to have more fun and to feel like I have more engagement with people. And to be honest, whenever I meet people in the Metaverse, and usually I'm on browser, and they'll meet me there, and it's maybe their first time because it's a client or a new client, and they're just laughing when they get there. And I don't think I've ever had that happen on a video call where people are just laughing and enjoying themselves and just
Right.
giddy. And like, we could all use more of that. Absolutely. But I just love, my drive for creativity in technology has always been, how can I get more connection with people? And I find, once COVID hit and I knew that virtual was going to be the main thing in like May of 2020, and we started working in this space, I knew that we weren't going to be just doing video streaming for Alt Ethos because it wasn't on brand. So we knew that we were going to jump into virtual worlds, and work in those spaces. And so from there, it's just grown. And I didn't know I was going to love it so much, to be honest. And I really do. I really have shifted a good portion of our business and our resources to building and designing in the metaverse.
It's really an important point, Ethan, because I think you both laid it out perfectly, but it's all about Zoom is the rational, effective thing that works. So you do Zoom calls, it's effective, you get on call, you get your point across to 1 to 3 people. But there's definitely an added emotional dimension to being in an immersive space. And for instance, we keep joking about, hey, how's your avatar and how's your hairstyle and what's the environment? Like you've noticed, we've spent the whole year meeting around pools, and it's not an accident. It's just to do like fun, exciting, cool stuff that are not rational, but they're emotional. And we are human beings, we're not computers. So I think it's very important to mix the efficiency on one hand of getting the point across, but you should always like strive to make it in a fun, exciting, engaging way at the same time.
Well, the whole point is to build relationship, right? I mean, personally, just because it makes us feel good, but also professionally, we can't be as efficient in our jobs and as good in our jobs if we don't have those relationships and we don't continue to build on those relationships with people. And there's only so much you can do through email, even in Zoom calls, because you're not having these relationship building kind of conversations, very focused, like you were saying, Ethan. And so it's really important for, the business or the effort in itself for people to build those relationships, to build those strong connections, to be able to work better together anyways.
Could I just add something to Terry's point around the spaces and meeting around a pool here? We find that in a business context, in a work context, the environment that you're meeting in really does nudge people's behaviors in different directions. Glue comes with a variety of different types of rooms, from big rooms, small rooms, indoors, outdoors, a cafe, a beach, a very conventional office spot space, and you can adjust how people interact with each other and how productive they are. For example, we find if you're in a small room with a table in it, people tend to be more focused and more staying on point. If you're in a big open space outdoors with big open skies, people are more creative, and they tend to go off point quite a lot, but they have better ideas. You can adjust. We have a like a beach environment, which is fantastic to just chill everybody out. If you're ever in a meeting where people are starting to get angry with each other or a little bit upset and there's like tension starting to rise, just do a breakout session to Clarity Island, and you're on a sandbar, a sunset, there's a fire pit, you can toast marshmallows. It just chills everybody out. Like, it's very hard to be upset with anyone in that kind of circumstance.
It's interesting that you're starting to have like observations on this.
Well, we have a lot. We have a lot of people coming through Glue and spending good bits of time in Glue. So we're really starting to build up some kind of a body of knowledge on how is interaction in spatial environments different from the real world or from video call.
We are big fans of having the right environment. So I completely second what you say on the environments. Hey, how about you show us a video of Glue in action, Adam?
Absolutely, yeah. So I a quick one, given that we're talking about virtual events. I shared a Vimeo link with Michelle, I think, earlier.
Yes, and Marcy
I don't know if we've got it.
Should be handling that. I'm looking, Marcy.
So yeah, these are some clips from a recent open hours that we had, where we get glue customers together to share best practices and ideas and just kind of network within the glue platform. It's kind of a fairly kind of small select group of people, but a really active community around the. Well, I don't know.
Hello and welcome to Clue. Today we host Clue Open Hours, our virtual event where we gather together with Clue users to discuss about VR and Clue use cases. Come on and join us.
There are some hints and tricks and didactics behind it, how to set up a training.
Our proposition is to accompany corporations along that journey, keep people engaged with the technology, and show them how they can use it well.
On the other end, there is full custom environments. For example, today we showed in the Glue Insights the Salesforce things which we've done for them.
When we have really big products, I mean, we don't have the training centers around the world where we actually can bring in these really huge products, and they're very, very expensive if you want to have a real hardware simulator. And for that reason, Glue is a perfect opportunity.
And that's Glue in action for virtual events.
My next question is when we first started getting into building virtual environments specifically for events and conferences and those types of things, like the natural inclination is to repeat what we can do in real life, which it does really well, having the conference rooms and the keynotes and the networking events and all of that stuff. But what I'm truly interested in is like kind of that next level thinking of, what more can we do to this with these spaces, with this technology, to kind of one up the experience, specifically when it comes to interacting with people, getting the point across, Terry, like you were saying, and just making it an overall better experience, so people would actually choose maybe to go into virtual reality event versus a physical.
You want to take that one first, Ethan?
Yeah, for sure. We've been doing events in lots of different types of platforms, so it really gives us a lot of information about how different functionalities are working in platforms. And then again, to Adam's point, like what type of spaces, what size of spaces, how are you moving people through the room? And one of the things that we've been really working with a lot lately, and we're going to have an event tonight for a crypto education class, is instead of having a platform or a stage where people all have to gather in one spot to be able to like come and hear the speaker, is that we do picture-in-picture broadcasting. And so that people could be all over the world, or, you still want to limit your space a little bit, but they could be anywhere in the world. And then you do a picture-in-picture broadcasting. And then, so we're working with that to see like retention and like people's, just how much people can pay attention while they're still able to wander, which I think is great, because it's kind of interesting to say like, oh, let's get out of, real world where we're all going to stand in this stuffy room, and let's go in the virtual world and stand in this stuffy room where we all have to stand together and you have to call everyone. Hey, everyone, come over here. We're all going to talk now. Well, why not just let people wander and then have the picture in picture and still have your point and be able to chat and ask questions and do that kind of thing. So we're working a little bit with those kind of different modalities of presentation, just to see how that functions and how we can get a different response. Because I find, especially when we're on browser and if we're just sitting and listening to someone talking, whether it's video or metaverse, like I have a tendency to click my email or click different things and look at different, want to be looking at different stuff. But if I'm able to walk around and see new things while I'm listening to someone talking, then I'm paying way more attention. So I guess it just depends on how your brain works. But we're working and again, like Adam, like gathering information and doing different test cases to see how things function and what works for different people.
So I think it's a fascinating area, and Ethan touched on, I think, is the critical point, which is attention. I forget who said it, but attention is the key resource of the 21st century. We're slowly kind of getting away from so many other types of resources, maybe not fast enough, but our share of attention is the one very, very limited. resource. You're only 24 hours a day. We're being bombarded in all different directions. But so to kind of address the question specifically, I mean, one thing about virtual events in the past was they always involved travel of some description. Maybe it was local travel, maybe it was just around the corner in your home city, but typically you'd be traveling to a different place at a different event. And so if you're doing that, it made sense to bundle everything together. You know, you want a keynote, a big name keynote, you want some conference tracks so people can learn and educate themselves. You want an expo booth so people can try out different products and companies can kind of demonstrate and sell their product. And then you want to network and you want people to be able to mingle. And you want to do that. If people are traveling to a venue, you want people to do all of those things all at once. Now, if we're removing the travel and the time constraint, does it really make sense to bundle all of those things into one package, which is kind of the traditional conference show format? You know, I think if you're doing a keynote, you know, purpose of me or of Glue doing a keynote is to get our message out to as many people as possible in one go. And so, you know, a video sharing platform is a much better way of doing that. And being able to share that on demand is much more important. If we are doing an expo booth, we want to connect with people who are actually qualified buyers, people who really want to, who we really can connect with. And if we can do that on Hawk, frankly, a typical trade show, 90% of the people are just wasting your time. They're coming around, checking things out. They're never actually going to be somebody who is within the target market that you're looking for. So maybe you could do that at Hawk and networking if there's a way of actually feeling like you're connecting and meeting people without having to get on a plane and fly across the country or the world. And maybe you don't have to do all those things together, and you can pull together groups of people who, you know, there's real value in connecting. You're not wandering around and meet on the off chance you meet someone for whom you know, you're going to form a long-term lasting relationship. So I think maybe looking at decoupling some of these things that we traditionally put together and said, okay, well, maybe we can use the medium in a more effective way and you know, use virtual reality for that networking and that connecting thing where you can kind of almost curate a group of people who you're like, these people should all get together and these people should all meet, rather than having 10,000 people in a room and on the off chance that you find the one person that you really want to connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to shift this conversation a little bit because as much as like we love talking about VR and immersive technology, we're also talking about just the evolution of events in general and how technology is evolving, you know, how we interact with people at large and how we interact with brands at large, and within events, you know, whether that's virtual, you know, in person, you know, this hybrid situation. So maybe Ethan, we can start with you. You know, if you can tell us about how in-person events are evolving with technology, like what are some examples you can point to with some activations that have made a real impact, and maybe talk about some of the value that's brought to both the attendee as well as the producing organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So huge differences in what's going on in events today than there was even just a couple years ago. I was just talking to some of our event partners yesterday, and I know across the market that there's some things happening that are actually triggering people to do more virtual events, I think, for going into the winter again. One is that cost of food has gone up 30 to 40%, and cost of travel has gone up like 30%. And so you can imagine if you're throwing an event and all of a sudden two of your main things have gone up 30%, that you're going to make different choices as to how you're going to have your event. Now, the partners that we were talking with yesterday, they have had a bang up year and broke all their records. And so they're doing a great job. And so it just kind of hit or miss, I think, in terms of what agency is doing what kind of markets. But one thing that we talked with them and that we're finding in all of our clients for the event industries is that the audience has completely changed, right? We've all completely changed in the last 2.5, 3 years. Would you agree? We have different expectations, right? Like when we go to an event, it's no longer just like We have different expectations of what we want to see at that event, how we're going to engage in that event, what's going to wow us, right? We've been like so saturated with media and then these immersive sort of experiences that when we go to an event, it better be something interesting. And especially if we're going to spend the money and risk COVID on the plane and do all these things to get there, then it's got to be something that's extraordinary. And so what we're finding is the conversation I had yesterday was the client that we were pitching. They had last year. They had a drone, like a 20-minute drone show, right? And they're like, well, this year it's got to be better than that, right? And so we're seeing this happen where people are like, we tried this, it was so cool, now it's got to be better than that. How can you be better than that? And we're going to keep finding this every year where people are like, okay, last year we did 3 immersive domes and a VR tent, and the VR dome with car racing, and how can it be better than that next year? And so we put together, we leaned in on that, because the other piece is that sponsors are also demanding to have something more interesting because they know the engagement has to be there for the attendees. So we leaned in on that, and we put together new packages where we can do sponsor engagements that are like holographic rooms, like I mentioned, digital domes, so like 360 sort of immersive VR environments, and doing a bunch of different activations, immersive projection mapped rooms, these sort of things that will get people really excited and stay in the location. Because I don't know about you, but well, I know about you actually because I read the reports, but usually when we go to a conference, we might hit like a couple talks, but then we're out the door and we're no longer at the conference center, the convention center. We're out exploring, which is great, exploring the city, going to the bar, going to the restaurant, going to the art museum. But like, how do you keep people engaged in where you have the event for the most of the event, almost the entirety of the event? So there's a lot of things that we're looking at to solve these problems. And you want me to go into super hybrid now too? Is that part of this? Or we want to
Yeah,
chat
I
later?
mean, yeah. I mean, well, my next question, actually, following up on what you were saying,
Sure,
Ethan,
sure.
is that well, first of all, let me premise this that and from what Ethan was saying, when we think of immersive technology, we think of just AR and VR, but as the general consensus is for how to access the metaverse and through all these multi-modalities. The things that Ethan is doing with, bringing immersive to physical events is just as important, especially when the adoption curve is still on the uptick. You know what I'm saying? And there's different
Absolutely.
purposes for why you would have a headset on in your home, a headset on in an event space or in a public space, or maybe you would do something with a dome or projection maps and things like that. So
Right.
there's a purpose for all of these things, and I think it does solve a problem of kind of that more of that one-to-one experience that we have in a VR headset, right? Versus if you are in a large group physically, like how do you solve that immersion, give everybody the same type of experience, while they're with each other. But then following up on what you were saying, Ethan, and this question is for both of you guys, because I think it's important for us to kind of forecast or try to forecast kind of what the trends are here, because I think we've seen a lot of back and forth in the past few years of what the expectations might be. But we know that immersive technology is supposed to just augment and improve our physical lives, and people still care about having that physical social connection with others, and we still want to attend these in-person events. So what are your thoughts for how in-person events versus virtual will be best utilized, and what is your vision for the best blend of both to produce hybrid events? Ethan, we'll start with you, and then we'll go with Adam.
Oh, I was gonna say let's start with Adam, and then we'll go with me.
Okay. All right,
I'll take a little break from talking here.
Rock, paper, scissors. Can we do that here? Okay. So I want to address your previous question as well, Sophie, if that's all right, and see if I can merge those two things together. So you'd asked about what people are doing, what the trends are, and both technology and what and events. And so I mean, we're seeing a bunch of things. One of the kind of case studies that I really want to talk about was the work we've done with Salesforce or Dreamforce. Their Dreamforce conference. So Dreamforce is huge. Probably everyone's heard of Dreamforce. And 2020, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. I think it basically just nothing happened. There were a few things coming and gone, but it was right at the beginning. There wasn't time to put something together really special. But for 2021, Salesforce were really looking. They still weren't having people flying around the world for that conference, or at least not to the same extent. They were looking to put something together where they could recreate that same experience for their customers and their stakeholders. So we built a custom environment that was all built around the Salesforce brand. It was out in the woods because their brand is all about hiking and the outdoors. There were different clearings within the space. Each one had a different purpose, and you could do keynote, you could do kind of town hall meetings. There were little exhibits that referred to specific customer use cases they had, different products lines, and you could walk around those pieces. And so that was, they call it Dreamforce Anywhere. That was kind of part of their Dreamforce offering in the virtual world for 2021. Now 2022 came around, they're kind of back to a certain extent in the world. But they're finding they're still using that same space for a whole bunch of different purposes. There are customers who aren't traveling to a centralized Dreamforce conference. There are customer engagement works as internal team meetings. They're repurposing that same environment for. And because it's all kind of customized to a brand identity, it really allows them to have a curated experience for their customers. And I think that's really an interesting point. And particularly, we do have some people using desktop in Glue to access it, but a lot of the time, those people are using virtual reality. And that's one of the challenges, I think, with the kind of the large scale conferences is the penetration of head-mounted displays is just not there to be able to say that let's put it on a conference and assume a good proportion of people have displays. That's one of the reasons why at Glue we're really focusing on smaller group, roundtable discussions, bringing together people who would be interested in talking to each other, whether it's at an executive level or communities of interest. And the kind of things where those are people who are traveling to do a kind of a roundtable workshop like that. They'd have a flight, they'd have a hotel. You can even justify the cost of a VR headset and ship those out to people and still be ahead in terms of cost, even if they never send them back, and certainly you can send them out as well. But you actually justify the investment in the hardware in a single use case, single time, and at that point, there's penetration out in the market for the hardware, and you can start. I mean, I've done a couple of conferences recently, which were Spatial, which were Metaverse based, but they were all mobile and they were all browser based interactions, and they were okay, but it didn't feel like I was there, and I didn't feel connected. So I think we're at that point where is something about putting this thing on your head that makes it a different experience. Not enough people doing it that we are there. So we've got these little niches of bespoke kind of more specialized events of smaller groups where you can actually ship out headsets out to people justified within a single case. Hopefully that addressed your question. Or two of them.
Yeah, that was jam-packed full of awesome stuff.
No, that was a great conversation, and actually we're over time. And I really didn't want to interrupt because you were all making really interesting points. But I think it's time for a QA, and I saw quite a few hands raised during the conversation. So, for instance, we've got one here. Ben.
I'm just plugging in and plugging out my battery from my from my controller just because it's empty. But look, guys, it's a very interesting conversation, and the thing that I'm doing, that I'm trying to make the VR and the real world come together. is by using a 360 VR camera like the Insta360 Pro, live streaming the event, the physical event, and also live streaming it, the virtual event. So then people can come like in the virtual event, the physical event, and from the physical event to the virtual event. So we have like a loophole. And I think this is very interesting as a sort of an art project, but also as an experience for the people that are in the physical event and also people that are in the virtual event, because you can do it at the same time. You understand what I'm trying to do here? I've been doing this for like 2 years almost, but no space has allowed me to live stream in 360 as of this point. And I'm really trying to collaborate with one of you to make this happen, because I think this is really a revolutionary thing to show the world, like, look what we can do. We can make a wormhole, we can have a virtual event and a physical event, and we can show both at the same time for both audiences. But yeah, that's my speech, and I'm done.
So was there a question?
No, there's no question. It's just like, do you want to collaborate with me to try to create something like this?
That is a question.
Yeah, I mean, I can maybe have a couple of thoughts on that one. I mean, we're always open to collaborating with people. If there is a conference that you want to pull together and you need a platform, then Glue is there. I mean, bear in mind, Glue is not a mass market. It is a mass market. It's not a kind of a public facing enterprise. We're an enterprise focused. We have a lot of security protocols in place to make sure that people's data are secure. So it doesn't work as well for this kind of event when you want random people, you want anyone to be able to come in and join a conversation. Couple of thoughts just on your, which I think is very interesting, and we need lots and lots of experiments. You might want to think about the whole 3 degree of freedom, 6 degree of freedom kind of trade-off. Because if you're taking a 360-degree video, it looks great from a single perspective. If you have multiple people within that space and they're moving around forward and back rather than just rotationally, then that could give you a different experience. I'm sure it's probably something you've already thought about and you're working on. But yeah, that was certainly Glue is about having this sick stuff. I think, sorry, Adrian, I think we've lost your audio. You probably got a great comment to add to that to my question to you. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes, he's thought about it. Yes, it works. Yes. Not a problem. Adrian, I think that's what I'm getting from the sign language in Glue is that what he's doing is fantastic and it works really well. So yeah, I mean, ping me and we'll see if we can do things.
Thanks, Adrian, and thanks, Adam. We have a hand raised behind, and that's Alex. Marcy, can you help us? And Deborah will take you afterwards as well.
I'm on a Mac right now, and it's the first time I'm trying this out. It's a different feeling, even in 2D. Like even if I'm not in a VR headset, I got your point about the Zoom meetings and the difference between the Zoom meetings and something like this. It is much more immersive, even on a laptop screen. But what I wonder is more about the VR headsets adoption. So I'm a VR enthusiast. I also do something on the side, but my question is, it's mostly, well, I don't know, like 80 million VR headsets are used for gaming or something like that. How do you think, because gamers are VR enthusiasts and they will surely adopt any new technology as it comes, how do you think this would translate into the more professional sort of segment of people? Do you think that's like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years time frame?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really has to do with where the headsets go as well, and we're seeing less cumbersome headsets, or the new headset that just came out with the able to see outside of your virtual space more easily, I think is really helpful for a lot of people. We have to remember one thing, which is that 50 to 60% of people who put on a headset or go in an immersive, dome, video dome or something like that, they get vertigo. And so there's got to be a lot of training that happens for people to be able to build up a tolerance for being able to be in these virtual immersive spaces so that they don't feel ill, right? So that's a big hurdle if you have half the population that's having that experience. But I do think allowing people some training. There was actually a woman who, I think it was like 10 years ago now, who did a presentation at one of the conferences I was at, and she created like yoga for VR because she was one of those people who could only spend like 3 seconds in VR to start with without feeling sick. So she started this whole yoga program. And then by the end of it, by the time I met her, she was spending, like six hours a day in VR, having meetings and all that good stuff. So there are ways for us to remap our nervous systems to be able to handle it a little bit better. Another thing to consider is just something that we're running into is a lot of the decision makers in companies are over 50, over 60 in a lot of cases. And you can imagine that if they're not in the tech sector, that it's a big leap for them just to keep up with a lot of things, but it's a leap for them to be able to put on a headset and feel comfortable with that. So there's just going to have to be some education and getting people onboarded and lighter headsets that allow more flexibility.
Great respect, Ethan. I'm actually going to completely disagree with everything you said, which makes for an interesting panel, I hope. So I'd say, to your question, Alex, on timing's now. We're in the multiple hundreds of organizations using immersive virtual meetings and events right now, and each one of those organizations has dozens, if not hundreds, of users within that organization. I'd say the gaming segment and the enterprise segment are not connected to each other. There's a big, if you're familiar with crossing the chasm, there's a big chasm between those two people, and it's not a flow from one to the other. It's two independent markets. So people are using Glue, and also our competitors and lots of other training tools, education tools, simulation tools within virtual reality, and that usage, the actual usage rates are as good, if not better, than the consumer gaming side of things. So this is a very hot area within the enterprise market, but it's not people starting with gaming and then starting using it for work. To your point on motion sickness within VR, so that is, and there are still a lot of applications out there that are designed, but you can design software such that you don't get sick. Now, you still get I demo Glue for new users 2 or 3 times a day. I would say we're probably in the 2% of people who feel any kind of queasiness. And when you ask them about it, they're people who can't be a passenger in a car. It's that level of motion sickness. If you've ever been in a boat, enjoyed yourself, you'll be fine in virtual reality with a well-designed platform. But the things that you need to bear in mind, like don't move through space in VR. And apologies to the AltspaceVR developers, you can still move space in VR in AltspaceVR, and it's a terrible design. You want to teleport in VR, and it cuts down the motion sickness. They do a blurring thing around the corners, which helps, but it still kicks me off in terms of that. So we've mostly solved with hardware. We're not dropping frame rates anymore, and with the design, you can cut down a lot of the motion sickness. And people and particularly in an enterprise application where you're asking people to do this not on an optional basis, it's super, super important that you never ever trigger people's motion sickness response because it's entirely unacceptable to do that.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, Adam, is your most resistant group sector of people who have a hard time still?
I think we're still in the early days, right? We're in probably past the very early evangelist stage. Starting to get into the early early majority or like the early adopters stage of this market. So there's still a large number of people. I think the biggest resistance is just the kind of the lowest common denominator argument, where you're trying to do a remote meeting. You want to be able to sit there, link on your computer, mostly ignore what's going on in the session and do a bunch of other things at the same time. And they're like, that's so much easier than putting on a headset and actually feeling like you're there. I don't want to feel like I'm there. I just want to click the meeting link and be seen to be there. Which is, in some cases, that's real, right? You want to be able to do that. You don't really need to be there in the meeting. But my point of view is, if you don't really need to be in that meeting, don't be here in that meeting. Have fewer meetings and actually feel there and actually connect with the people that you're talking to and actually get work done, get it done faster, and then get back to actually producing work. It is a mindset change. It is it isn't about. I would not recommend having 8 hours back to back of VR meetings.
I was about to say I wouldn't recommend 8 hours of meetings back to back either. We are getting seriously over time, but at the same time the questions are really interesting, the answers are really interesting. So I really didn't want to interrupt. What I suggest we do, if everyone agrees, is maybe we take 2 more questions and we try to have quick answers, and then we move on to the breakout. And I know over time, but I think it's a good conversation. So the 2 hands I saw were Deborah. I know you had a question for a while. You want to ask? And Sam, I saw your question as well.
Hi, Adam. Hi, Ethan. One of the things that we've seen in the event industry is a real adoption over the past few years of data and technology. You see like a ton of mobile apps that event producers have created, and it really drives a lot of analytics in the pre-work for a conference, the work for a conference during the conference, and then obviously the post follow-up. So this has been a real focus about creating some more rigor around, meetings and meeting the right people. Speaking to, Ethan's point about you don't want to just be like, hopefully that randomly you're going to meet the people you need to meet. This is a way to put some discipline around it. Considering all the data we have around people and places and locations and demographics in immersive spaces, I'd love to hear how VR and what you're doing with your clients when you're setting up events. How are you using data to make these more enriched for your event producers and sponsors?
Fascinating area. It's I'm back in the host zone. Okay, it's a really interesting area, and it's the ability to get granular data on what people are doing at events in a space, in a virtual space. It's so much better in the real world. Without, you'd have to anonymize it, of course, to avoid people's privacy issues, but you could really find out, what people like, what people don't like, who's connected with who, and start to draw those maps. Glue is primarily a meeting platform where you are meeting with people most of the time you already know, you already work with. So we've really not even started to scratch the surface of the potential for that. But I think for a dedicated event and conference platform, that's definitely something that we should be looking at as an industry.
And I'd say, we are really in the early days when it comes to this sort of data gathering and knowing what's important and how. And there's so many different types of platforms that are being used and everything. And each platform is sort of in its own different phase of development. So there's that to consider. For instance, AltspaceVR has been around for how many years now? 12 years or something like that. So it's one of the older platforms, but a lot of newer platforms that are on the market, and we're going to see that continue to happen in the next couple of years. Now, I do know that investment money for metaverses is currently not a happening thing, but there was a big burst earlier in the year, and we'll see that again, I'm sure, in 2023 and beyond. And we'll see a lot more of those platforms starting to look at, how do we get those data sets for events. It really depends on how things go over this next 6 months, I think, in terms of like who's using what and what are the need, right? Because it's all driven by need. I do want to, before we end up leaving, though, I want to jump in on something else and say that um, we are developing a hybrid system at All Ethos. We have a patent pending right now where we make the metaverse and the real world seamlessly engaged. And it would look like in the real world, it would look like the room is just extended and the metaverse is on that extension. And you can actually walk up to each other and talk, avatar to human, and vice versa. So it just looks like you're all in the same room and having the same experience, but you're able to network. And so, in part of that design that we're working on is the ability to sort of do, for lack of a better example, like a chat roulette networking system where you can actually network with people who have your similar interests and stuff. And there's going to be data on both sides of that, but it will take some time to really like suss out like how that lands for the data set.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you both. Sophia, I believe you need to run, right? Fortunately.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I need to go to my next meeting, but it was a pleasure speaking with you guys. And yeah, feel
Good to
free
see you
to
again.
reach out to me too about anything that you guys need. Thank you. Bye, guys.
All right, see you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thanks, Sophia.
Adam, Ethan, do you have time for one last question, or do you need to go?
For sure.
I could do one more thing. So Sam is
Okay,
jumping
so-
up and down.
I know. Sam has been exactly. So Sam has been jumping up and down for like 20 minutes. So Sam, please.
It better
ask
be a
your
good question
I know.
after this.
Thank you.
Spotlight's on you.
Thank you. I hope my
Sure.
question comes out well. English is not my first language, so pardon me for that. So I'm very interested in the social part of VR. I think it has massive potential to connect us like all over the world. It's amazing. Now with a little bit more adoption, I think that actually it's time to start like developing something great. So I'm looking into developing something with some partners. I'm an entrepreneur. I do e-commerce, so something not related, but I know how to run a business. So, what I've been looking at right now, I've been exploring Altspace, I've been exploring Horizon, I've been exploring VR chat, and it all looks like there are people that are trying to do some social experiences under these umbrellas. So under the Altspace umbrella, under the Horizon umbrella, and so forth. And I'm wondering why there's not that much of like independent developer, so independent app developed that could be, a little bit better cater to the needs that the people want. Is that just one more thing? Like I feel like people kind of don't like Horizon that much. Like it's all limited, and so I feel like custom experiences could be built with like different apps. So I'm just like, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so this is absolutely happening on a widespread level. Like I'm having a hard time keeping up with the amount of apps that are actually being developed. And by app, it could be, like downloadable app on your computer, browser based, or phone app is a little less likely. And there's a ton of stuff that has been developed just in the last few years, and we see a lot of things coming to market. One of the things why you're not seeing it as much on the consumer level is it's super expensive. It takes a long time to develop. They have to do a lot of QA before they make sure it's not going to crash before they launch it. Is it going to be a public app where just consumers can go in and play games like Roblox, or is it going to be more private app, per world build that people will go to that location? So there's a lot of different things out there. I think the gaming apps, ones that are more public, you're seeing less of. And then the private ones are being built for like architectural companies or McDonald's or, like different things like this. Those are more like business to business launched. And so you're not seeing those as much, but that's kind of where we play mostly. We do public apps and building in those because we have some clients that need where people are just going to happen into the space. But a lot of times we're doing these custom builds, like
ஆரம்பிக்கலாங்களா?
Or for a certain brand that wants a certain population of people and like engage through their NFT community or something like that. So does that answer your question, Sam?
Yeah, and only I'd echo that. There's a lot of things going on in the enterprise space which are proprietary, which are being used internally in terms of custom worlds and custom applications. In terms of the gaming space, I'm less qualified to really talk about that. But there are a lot of social applications. There are multiplayer things around virtual worlds on the gaming space. I think what's going to happen with Among Us VR is really interesting within a demographic. My son's really into Among Us, and that's it's a game. There's a purpose of getting there, but it is fundamentally social as well. And so that they have a really big and enthusiastic user base already. And seeing how that ports over to a virtual world, similarly with Minecraft, I think would be another one where you have a very dedicated user base who are looking to use that. And there already are VR versions of Minecraft, but they've either been PlayStation specific or they've been kind of sideload ports over. So it'll be really interesting to see how those kind of existing open platform worlds and map across to what happens when you get in a headset. Do people want that? Do people want to be?
Or to your point, what existing games or platforms out there are going to shift to adjust, right? Like Fortnite has been talking about being an open metaverse platform as add on to, right, the gaming side of it. And they've been doing stuff. They just did a thing for Cannes Film Festival where people could go in and do the red carpet, and they did a game where they're like, you had to pick up the papers of a script or something. And so there's going to be a lot of adjustments and shift to existing, and then there's going to be a lot of new platforms. And it might not be that far out that in the next few years you just go to like Unity or Unreal and you download a metaverse platform from their shop, so there's going to be a lot of changes for sure.
All right, well, thank you guys, thank you so much. Does that answer your question? Fantastic. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ethan. I think that was a great conversation. That was probably the longest conversation we've had. Again, because I think it was super interesting. There's still plenty of people. So thank you all for all of the questions. And I suggest if you have more, if you want to continue the conversation, you can continue on LinkedIn. You can post your questions in our group, Reality Innovators Network, and happy to continue the conversation there. And now, so we are at the end of the first hour, and for all of us who are watching us online, this is goodbye, and thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Yeah, it was pleasure being here. Look, really nice talking with you, Ethan and Terry and Sophia, who's gone now. But yeah,
yes,
pleasure to talk to you all.
Thanks, Adam.